Hey everybody, it's Peter, and this is the 2024 Kawasaki Z7 Hybrid. It is the very first hybrid motorcycle that I've ever seen in my life, and the very first one I'm going to review, and from what I can tell online, it's the very first hybrid motorcycle that anybody has seen and anybody wants to review, and I can already tell you there's a lot of misinformation about this online. There's some kind of hinting at information that allows people to draw conclusions that may or may not be correct. So what we're going to do in this video is go through this vehicle to the best of our knowledge. Now I have a little bit of early access here. We haven't got all of the information that we want on this bike, but what I'm going to do is introduce this bike to you in detail in this video, try to show you some things that the other articles, other videos aren't showing you. And then we're going to come back to it. But the key is we're going to come back to this bike with your questions. So if you have any interest at all in this bike, I promise you that on this video series, this and the next and more if we need to, we will be making sure that our information is accurate. So do me a favor, let's help this video spread a little bit so that we can spread proper information about this bike. So do me a favor, liking matters. If you want to hit subscribe to this, to follow this, to see the next video on this, by all means do that. I review motorcycles all the time. And do me a favor, leave a positive comment, just that you're happy that we're doing this video, or if you have a question, leave a comment. If we do that, we can hopefully get this video to sort of spread a little bit and make sure that the information about this bike is accurate. Because like I said, with any new EV, with any new technology, there's always a little bit of assumptions going on from people that aren't used to reviewing this type of vehicle. And that's what I want to make sure is that we're getting the right information out to you so that you can make the best decision for yourself. This bike is going to be great for some people. It's not going to be great for other people. We're going to talk about that and more in this video. So let's get going. So the first thing I'm going to do is put this in a class. And let's be fair, it's not going to fit perfectly in a class. This is called the Z7 and that Ninja 7 as well. And I think that 7 denotes the type of class that this bike is going to be in. It's going to be in that 650cc Kawasaki range, that 700cc kind of range that Kawasaki doesn't currently have a bike in. But because it's partially electrified, it's going to be different. What you'll hear on Kawasaki's own website is that this thing has superbike acceleration and it has 250cc fuel efficiency. And it can also run on fully electric at times. And while all of those are true, they lead people to have sort of ideas about what this bike may or may not be. And we're going to go through that in this bike. We're going to talk about some of those claims, put them in context so that you have a realistic expectation of what this bike is. We're also going to go through the pieces and parts on this bike so you have a sense of what it is. First of all, physically, I want to say that in a lot of pictures, this bike looks like awkwardly long, including on Kawasaki's own website. It is a little bit longer bike, but when you see it in person, it does look much more proportional. So that's just one thing I wanted to get out of the way. I'm not sure how it presents on video right now, but it does look relatively proportional, and it's a little bit longer, larger bike. It doesn't feel like a small toy. It feels like a substantial bike. So let's also get going with one other key detail. In the past, I believe that this was going to come out as a PHEV, and that means it's a plug-in hybrid vehicle. What those are is you plug it into the wall, it gives you a certain amount of electric range, and then it switches over to a regular hybrid. A regular hybrid is what this is, and what that means is that it does not have to plug in at all. The engine charges the battery as well as regenerative braking. In other words, when you're slowing down and braking, that's also going to feed energy back in the battery. So this, as far as ownership experience, is exactly like a regular motorcycle. You're going to have your oil changes because it's got a gas engine. You're going to park it in the garage. You're not going to have to plug it in. You're just going to get on and drive. But in your driving, just like a Toyota Prius and a whole bunch of other hybrids out there, in your driving, it will charge the battery. And while driving and charging that battery, it will give you electric assist, and it will also give you pure electric range. Now, where it gets a little bit confusing for some people is some of the reports out there are talking about how much electric range you can get. And there may be information out there that's correct. That's one of the things I don't have officially. But on a regular hybrid, it can switch to EV mode at certain points. On this bike, you have a EV mode, so you can switch it to electric power. Now, it has to have enough electric power for you to switch, and how long it runs will depend on how much regeneration it's done. It gets great fuel efficiency, and that's what it's designed for. It's also designed to be fun, which is one of the things that some electric bikes are not. So you have that sort of Kawasaki handling, you have the great fuel efficiency, and you will have some acceleration. So we're going to talk about that really quickly before we go through the parts. Let's just clarify some of that acceleration. All right, again, from Kawasaki's own website, their own press material, they talk about this having super bike-like acceleration. And then as you dig in further, it tells you how this can beat a ZX-10 off the line. And that reminds me of some other EV marketing that's already taken place in the past, only it was more tongue-in-cheek. When the smart car, that little tiny little smart car, when that came out as an electric car, they used to talk about how it could out-accelerate a Porsche from a stoplight. And what they showed was the first split second of it taking off. Every single time it would beat the Porsche off the line for about a foot or so, and then the Porsche would just absolutely crush it. So this is kind of similar but different. When they say it can out-accelerate a ZX-10 for a short time, what that means, I mean, first of all, it's a little skewed. A ZX-10 is not the best bike for a 0 to 60 race. Even though it's got an immense amount of power, all of that power is high up in the rev range. What electric motors do is give you a lot of torque down low from 0 RPM, right? So if you had a ZX-10 and you give it the throttle from the start, this may actually have more torque lower in the rev range because of the electric motors assisting, and that can help it out-accelerate a ZX-10 down low. So while it's not false marketing, it is something that you have to keep in mind that there's a very specific time where it could potentially out-accelerate a ZX-10, and it is from a stop. It is probably not passing power. When you dig in further, they talk about this being sort of a class competitive to the 650 lineup within Kawasaki, but it has that boost which can help in certain situations to be more than, say, a 650. The engine on this we'll talk about more. Let's start at the front wheel and work our way back. So if you've seen my videos before, you know I like to start at the front wheel because the front wheel determines the manufacturer's intent for this bike. Now, of course, it doesn't talk about the efficiency and all that at this point, but these are essentially recycled parts from what I can tell from other 650 bikes in the class. So the weight of this is similar to something like the Versus 650, which that actually has upside down forks. It's the only 650cc that has the upside down forks, or the inverted forks, as some people want me to say. This is the traditional looking style of the Z650, the Ninja 650, that kind of thing. And that kind of makes sense. The brakes are the same size and probably directly taken off of those classes of bikes. You have the dual discs, 300 millimeter across, well vented, sort of simple brakes, but again, quality brakes for what this is going to be. So you've got good sporting performance here. Like I said, very similar to something in the 650 class. Wheel sizes front and rear are going to match. Now the front wheel size is going to match super sport bikes, all kinds of bikes. That's very common to have a 120/70s ZR17 tire on just about every sporty type bike, so that's a very common front wheel. You have a 160 on the rear, which again is going to match those Ninja 650 type tires. So that's basically what you're looking at from a tire perspective, and that makes sense. That's basically the class of this bike that you're looking at from a performance perspective. Now let's head to the powertrain. Let's talk about what we know, and we'll talk about the things that we don't know. So taking a look at the heart of this bike, we've got the engine here that we're pretty familiar with. So the Ninja 500 is basically the same, actually it is the same engine as this. When we talk about just the gasoline engine or the ICE engine, internal combustion engine, ICE, they say ICE in the EV world. But what this is essentially the Ninja 400 engine that's been stroked out to have longer cylinder travel to be 451cc. It's now the Ninja 500, and that's what this is. So it's been a proven engine in bikes, minor tweaks to get a little extra displacement in it, and that's how you have the Eliminator 500, Ninja 500, Z500, that kind of thing. Same engine here. The difference is it's going to be paired to an electric motor that will assist it or be used all on its own. The other difference is it's got a battery pack in there to power that electric motor. You do not have to plug this in at all. It charges purely from the engine or from deceleration in what they call regenerative braking. So regenerative braking basically is a lot like engine braking as far as the way it feels. You know how a motorcycle, you let off the throttle, it's going to have heavy braking? Well, that's going to also charge the battery and that kind of thing, as well as the engine running can charge the battery. So that's how you're getting your electric power. Now there's another difference. It does not have a manual transmission the way we think of with a normal motorcycle. Technically you can shift yourself, but it's essentially an automated system, which we're going to show you when we head up to the controls. So you can drive it in full automatic mode. When you drive it in full automatic mode, it is just like an automatic car chooses its shift points. Every automatic car, every automatic vehicle has a computer telling it when to shift. If you've driven a manual transmission in the past, when you're revving fast, you let it shift late, and a lot of cars with automatic transmissions will have a sport mode to allow it to shift late. So when you're driving this in the automatic transmission mode, it is geared, or it's choosing its shift points based on efficiency, not performance. So you're going to want to manually shift for maximum performance, but if you just want to sort of relax and let it do its thing, that's going to help it be in its efficiency mode. Now, because it has an electric motor, it does give you a few extra features. The electric motor allows it to run on pure electric at times. There's a switch, again, we'll show you this when we get to the switch gear. There's a switch that allows it to switch to pure EV if you've got some charge, and that allows you to have, to drive silently, you know, on pure electric, and it'll tell you how much electric range you have in your dash. We can show you that when we get there as well. It also has things like a walk mode, which allows you to go forward and reverse, so you do not have to walk this in and around your garage or in a parking lot, that kind of thing. I suggest sitting across it in the walk mode. Don't walk beside it in the walk mode. Just trust me on that one. I think the manual says the same thing. But because the electric motor can go forward or reverse, just reverse the current. It can pull it backwards. It does allow you to have that walk mode as well. So a lot of technology bits going on in here. But as far as a riding perspective, we've seen hybrids around for a long time. The other thing it will do, hybrids turn off engines at stoplights, that kind of thing. Then they normally do it when they're warmed up and that kind of thing. You've got a cooling system here that's not an air-cooled system like some electric bikes. It has a radiator in there. But when everything's warmed up, when everything's up to temperature, when it meets the parameters, the engine itself can shut off at a stop. Now, a lot of people are under the misconception that the starter motor will wear out when it restarts. Well, this is a hybrid. It has a different style starter motor. It's made to start up. So you've got emissions savings for sure with this system. You've got fuel savings for sure with this system. And then you've got a little bit different technology. So again, if you're familiar with a hybrid, you have a sense of what this is. But it's not a plug-in hybrid. It's not a full EV. And it's going to give you some assistant performance. But again, that superbike performance is not going to be available throughout the rev range. We'll talk about that as we get to some of the controls as well. So let's move a little further back and then we'll go up. I'm going to show you what it's like with me sitting on the bike and then show you some of the controls. So I just want to briefly show you the rear tire again. That 160 millimeter width, that is again in line with the Ninja 650, those bikes in that class, in the 650 class. And again, I want to show you the brakes here. No difference on the rear brakes from a regular motorcycle. So remember, regenerative braking doesn't use this. It doesn't use your brakes. There's not a modification to your actual brakes. What it is the electric motor that powers it. It sends the current through to allow power, or the wheel can be like a generator. So if you've ever had like a wind-up flashlight that charges, this can work the same way. It's when it's powering the wheel, it sort of runs one way, but when the wheel is pushing the bike, in other words, when it's decelerating or something like that, it can basically act like a wind-up flashlight and charge the battery, which can help you get a little extra range, a little extra fuel efficiency, a little extra electric charge in there. So hopping across this bike, I'm a 6-footer, proportional 6-footer. So again, if you're taller or smaller or whatever it is, you can sort of get a sense here. First thing I'm gonna say is the seat looks nice and wide to me. Rear seat, typical for this kind of class of bike. Swing my leg over, jump across here, and I am easily flat-footed. So this is going to be a very comfortable bike. Now, it's not the lightest bike in the world. It is close to 500 pounds, but for instance, the Versys 650 is also close to this weight, but the Versys 650 is taller, so I'm far more confident on this. Would I recommend this bike to a beginner? It is heavier than the typical beginner bike, so you have to be comfortable with the weight of that. It also is a little different, but it doesn't require you to shift, so that might be a pro for a beginner. It allows you to just focus on the riding, not get kind of thrown off by that. And again, it's very comfortable. So you can see here, this is called a Z, right? So Kawasaki has their different classes. The Vulcan has one seating position. The Eliminator has another seating position. The Ninja, the Z, all those have different seating positions. So a Z is a basically comfortable naked bike. It's not a super aggressive Ninja. There is a Ninja version of this which has a slightly different handlebar position, but still very comfortable. It's not an aggressive Ninja. But this, again, very comfortable, ride all day kind of thing. So what this is a very practical bike to ride all day with great fuel efficiency, simplicity, and also cool technology. But if you're thinking about, do I want to do a tour on this bike? You could just strap some luggage on here. You'd have to figure out how that's going to work. It's a typical sport bike rear seat here, so there's lots of options to attach things there. You can get a tank bag on here, but you could certainly go longer trips on this, be pretty comfortable. You do have some wind getting to you. You could probably find an aftermarket windshield that makes it a little bigger, but again, this might be a unique nose, might take a while to get some of those aftermarket windshields. I haven't checked Kawasaki's website to see if they have a taller windshield, but again, you're gonna have some wind just like you would on a typical naked bike, but very comfortable seating position, well-cushioned seat, good size, good padding, and again, you can see I'm very, very comfortable here. So before I show you the dash, I want to show you some of the controls because we're going to refer to them as I talk about the dash, and there are things I don't know about the dash. So this is where your questions may have to come in and help me. You let me know the kind of things that you want to know, and we'll go from there. First thing I want to point out is there's a little gray trigger here, and there's a little thumb piece right there. So the thumb button right here is your downshift button. The trigger is your upshift button. Now, again, you can set it in automatic mode or you can set it in manual mode. And you can upshift and downshift if you like in the manual mode. Question that I'm sure you're going to want to know is if it's in the automatic mode, what happens if you tap these? Are they dead, or do you have to switch to automatic mode to get them to work? That's one of the things I have to figure out yet. I haven't been able to take this bike out yet. Again, brand new, so we're going to figure some of these things out as we go. But I just wanted to show you those, and no clutch lever here because, again, no gear shift at all on this, so no gear shift lever. So all of your shifting is done there. One little piece that you probably won't be able to see later is push this out for your high beam. In the center position is your regular low beam, and if you trigger it there, that is your high beam. Typical Kawasaki stuff, but there's a whole bunch of other controls here, and I want to show you them, and then I'll show you the other side before we get to the dash so that you can see what I'm talking about when we get to the dash. Okay, so staying with the same handlebar here, this is the left side. You've got a number of things going on. So there's no cycling through your different modes here. There's a sport mode and an eco mode, separate buttons for each, and then there's a select button which selects various things. There's also an AT-MT button, that's an automatic transmission or manual transmission, so that'll cycle through that. Then there's an HEV and EV button. HEV is hybrid electric vehicle. So this is never a gas only vehicle. It always has some level of either charging or using the electricity, and that's why it's always called HEV. So it's not like gas or EV, it's a mixture of gas and electric or fully EV, and that's what cycles you through there. So these controls are pretty important to how they work. There's also a walk button in here. Remember, there was a walk setting. Again, I recommend sitting across the bike to use that walk button. You can go forward or reverse with that walk button, and we can show you that in another video probably. I've done it with the EV bikes here as well. Signal, horn, typical stuff. Different actually switch gear here because this whole piece is different. So different signal, different horn than you have on any other Kawasaki bike. And you do have a hazard light there, or four-way flasher, whatever you want to call it. So quite a bit of switch gear here, but all very easy, right? You don't have to cycle through menus. You don't have to guess what the buttons do. Sport mode, eco mode, automatic or manual, hybrid or EV, and a walk button. Very clear and easy to see. Let's just look at the other side here, and we'll show you the different controls there as well. Over here on the throttle side, typical stuff, or the accelerator, I guess. They can't call it a throttle because it does control the throttle in the gas engine, but it's also just an accelerator on an EV. So I'm going to continue to call it the throttle, but again, technically I would be incorrect if it's in EV mode. So throttle there, you have your kill switch, start switch built into one here. Not something Kawasaki usually does. They do it on some bikes, but not all of them. So again, unique switch gear there. And then an e-boost mode. This e-boost mode is going to give you, I believe it's up to 5 seconds. That's one of the things I have to figure out, but it's going to give you a number of seconds of full power. Now, the reason it doesn't give you more than that is because they don't want the battery to get too hot. When you use a battery heavily, it gets hot. If you think about on your cell phone, if you're really working it hard, the cell phone battery gets hot, same idea. So it will allow you, when the battery has enough charge, to go into an e-boost mode, and it'll kind of give you a bar graph to explain how much you can use before it's gone. This is how you're going to get that super bike-like acceleration from a stop, is you're going to use that full power. So this is going to be what unlocks that full power. Now you can use this at any speed, but as you're accelerating more, it's not going to give you superbike performance in the higher revs of the gas engine. It's going to give you a boost of power, but again, that superbike-like performance is marketing terms more than practical terms, and it is a very specific subset where it will give you superbike-like acceleration. So it's going to give you some boost for passing, it's going to give you some boost for other stuff. That's, again, an electronic boost. It'll have a bar graph to show you how long, and it's only going to be a few seconds of that extra boost. Like I say a few, could be 5, could be more. Some of the information I'm seeing says 5. I have to confirm some of that, so that'll be one of the questions we ask. And if you have nothing to write in the comments, say that's the question you want to know. How long does the e-boost last? That's a great comment to leave. You can do that right now if you're still watching. All right, let's take a look at the dash now. All right, typical Kawasaki TFT display here, and that means that I have to go through a quick clarification. It is going to be clearer in person than you're going to see on this video. It is easy to read in person. It doesn't film 100%, but you're going to see here it comes to life. Now, what's different about this is although the TFT display is the same, the software is completely different. So you can really see what you've got here. So you do have a tachometer up top, which again runs around 10,500 RPM. So that's again similar to the, if not exactly the same as the Ninja 500, which makes sense. That's the same engine. Now, where a tach is a little less important on something like this is because you have electric assist at times, you might have acceleration, let's say between 6,000 and 8,000 without the tach having to move that much. It might be using some extra electric motor and that kind of thing. So what you have here is fuel gauge over here and a battery gauge over there. So you've got fuel in the bike, but the battery is not really charged right now. So that makes sense. We haven't really driven this thing. I don't think, oh, what did we put, 2 kilometers on it, driven around the parking lot. So the battery has to be charged a little bit to have some EV range. Now, we're gonna cycle through here. I'm gonna just hit this button right here for now. How to work this screen without these buttons. There are some other buttons here. I haven't played with that a whole lot. So in there, I just switched, you have efficiency, kilometers per liter, could be liters per 100 kilometers, could be miles per gallon US, miles per gallon UK. So it's currently set to kilometers per liter, but that's your instant fuel efficiency. Then you have your average fuel efficiency. Again, 4.4 liters per 100 kilometers. Again, this hasn't been running on electric mode yet. They just drove around the lot, that kind of thing. So ignore fuel efficiency numbers here because they're not going to be relevant to how it actually is. And then you have range. So this is overall range of the motorcycle. Again, like every Kawasaki, once you start driving, it's going to give you that range and give you a guesstimate there. Now, the other thing you have is EV range. Now, EV range is once this battery gauge kind of picks up a little bit as it's been charging, you're going to be able to take this thing in pure EV for a certain distance. That's another question I don't have confirmation on for how far it can charge if it has a full, or how far it can run if it has a full charge. Now again, that's going to be rider weight dependent, it's going to be conditions dependent, but they haven't given a number, so I don't know exactly how far that is. That's something I'd like to find out, or at least to get a guesstimate from somebody who has true knowledge of what that is. And then over there you have sort of the start button here. It tells you right now you've got the kill switch, what to do to press that start switch and then go. When you start this up, it's going to be in neutral. So even if it's an automatic or whatever, it's not going to roll away from you, but that throttle will be active once you put it into a gear. So you can switch into a gear. We'll have to figure out how to do that exactly. I think you could probably press the, yep, so there we go. I did the manual switch there and switched it myself. Now, if I'm going to go to automatic, does it change anything? Nope. It just allowed me to switch into the first gear there and switch it back out with the minor. So that's the dash here. Battery temperature there, fuel gauge here. You've got battery gauge there. Gear indicator, it is a 6-speed transmission, so you have that there. Clock, a number of other things. I want to dig into this more. There's more settings to dig into, but I don't want to go too long in this video. So let's talk about who this bike is for, because this is an interesting one. The bike is priced well in my mind for what it is. I bought the Z900 RS SE. It's around 15-ish thousand. This is going to be less expensive than that. So it's within a normal bike range. And again, this is going to have strong acceleration at points. And if you're the kind of person that drives casually, but every now and then wants some really strong acceleration, this is going to fit that. So while there is technically a penalty to buying a hybrid from a pure price perspective, it's certainly within the range of normal. And to me, this is a far more average person ready motorcycle than the current EVs by Kawasaki. I've been open about that. The current EVs from Kawasaki, the lower powered ones, are not going to be for everyone. This is going to be for a much wider range of people, but who buys it and why do you want it? There's not going to be a direct dollar for dollar payoff for a long time over something like the Ninja 500 or even the Ninja 650 or Z650 in this case to be a direct competitor. There's not going to be a direct payoff when you consider that the purchase price of those is lower, and this does have some fuel savings, but motorcycles don't use a ton of fuel anyway, so saving 10, 20, 30, even 50% of your fuel on a motorcycle is a lot different than saving 50% of your fuel on a pickup truck, right? It's going to have that number is going to add up quicker. So to me, who's looking for this? People who are a little bit eco-conscious, who want something unique, want something kind of cool, want something that can drive in portions in full EV mode, but also want to be able to have no limitations of an electric motorcycle. I reviewed a Zero motorcycle just the other day, and it does have limitations for range, and it's very slow charging. This thing is a normal motorcycle. Fill it with gas and off you go. You've got power, you've got efficiency, you've got something that handles fairly well, probably pretty stable with the longer wheelbase. It might give you a little bit more stability, and I think it's kind of bike that is comfortable enough you can do longer rides with without any issues. So you don't have any of the limitations to a pure EV. You do have great fuel efficiency, but you're buying this because you like the technology of lower emissions, you like the technology of a little bit better fuel mileage as well, and you're interested in that electric power boost, which can help you. That to me is who this is for. This bike would fully appeal to me. I think it's a great bike for the type of riding I do. Weekend rides, commuting, that kind of thing. It's going to be great in town. The other difference is you have to not want a traditional manual transmission. There's no way to adapt this to get a traditional manual transmission. That being said, most Porsches that sell now do not have a traditional manual transmission. They have paddle shifters. This is going to be a very similar paddle shifter type experience. So this is interesting. I think Kawasaki's made something that is road ready and even mainstream ready for someone who knows what it is. It's priced appropriately in my mind. It's going to give you performance that I think is comfortable for people, and it's going to give you some interesting technology that I think is fairly well ironed out from what I can tell so far. But you all probably have questions about this, things that I didn't get to. There are going to be things that I need to look into, and we will come back to this bike again. So do me a favor, especially if you made it this far and you haven't hit a like or left a comment or hit the subscribe button. Do those for me. Let's make sure this video spreads a little bit so that we can make sure that I have some pressure on Kawasaki, because I'm going to take your questions in the comment section, take them right to Kawasaki. I'm filming here at Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's Power Sports. This is the #1 volume Kawasaki dealer in the country. They're going to work with me to get all the answers we need from Kawasaki to make sure that we are the most knowledgeable and hopefully the most accurate. If I've made mistakes in this video, I'm going to correct them in that video as well. So do me a favor, let me know in the comments what you think. And there you go. There is Kawasaki's new hybrid motorcycle. We'll talk to you in the next one.